And welcome back to the LOOPcast. Today, joined by Erica and Josh. We have an excellent show prepared for you today. I would like to start out with, I think there's going to be some healthy debate.
We might get into it a little.
Yes. I feel as though this is a massive scandal and head should roll. Other members of this panel may not feel the exact same way.
Josh is yawning. Josh is yawning.
For the audio listeners. But I really do think it's fascinating. We're going to cover a few other topics today. Was JPII the OG feminist? I don't know. You'll have to find out. But before we get to all of that, we have to thank our sponsor for the show, Charity Mobile. Thank you, Charity Mobile, for sponsoring today's show. Pro-Life Phone Company. When you switch to Charity Mobile, 5% of your monthly plan price goes to the pro-life, pro-family charity of your choice at no extra cost to you. It's everyday living made effortless giving. It's time to make the switch. With the same nationwide coverage as the major carriers, Charity Mobile has a variety of plans to fit every need, from basic talk and text options to unlimited data. And you can get up to 8 lines. They offer a range of phones from simple flip phones to the latest 5G smartphones, or you can bring your own compatible device, plus no contracts, no termination fees, and a 30-day guarantee. There's no risk in giving them a try. I would not recommend texting war plans over your Charity Mobile plan if you do give it out. Charity Mobile has been in business for nearly 30 years, providing U.S.-based customer service by phone, chat, or email. So why not buy the way you believe and support causes that matter to you with your everyday phone use? New customers can get a free phone after instant credit, plus free activation and free standard shipping with the promo code LOOPcast. You heard it here first. Thank you so much, Charity Mobile, for sponsoring today's episode. Okay, I think this is important. I want to set this up because I know there's going to be debate. But first, what broke onto the scene, right? This Atlantic article, and I'll share it. This is where it all started. Quote, the Trump administration accidentally texted me its war plans. U.S. national security leaders included me in a group chat about upcoming military strikes in Yemen. I didn't think it could be real. Then the bombs started falling. This is by Jeffrey Goldberg. He is the editor of The Atlantic. If you recognize that name, he has been a prominent TDS sufferer. He was famous for sketchy sourcing for quotes. I think he wrote some articles in support of the Afghanistan war, which was tough. So yes, he has a checkered history. He's very anti-Trump, and he is questionable at best when it comes to journalistic ethics. So that's why this really rang a lot of the alarm bells. I'm going to go over his version of events before we get into a lot of the backlash, but I think it's important to establish what are we starting with here. So starting with Goldberg's version, Tuesday, March 11th, received a connection request on Signal from a user identified as Michael Waltz. Michael Waltz is the U.S. National Security Advisor under Trump. And for those who don't know what Signal is, it's an encrypted messaging app. I believe it was actually approved for use by the Biden administration under the past administration, but it's very common just for you and me, anyone. I have Signal. If you don't want people snooping in on your messages, you go to Signal. So this is where it happened. Goldberg said he was initially suspicious about this, but accepted the request. And 2 days later, on that Thursday, 4:28 p.m., Goldberg received a notice. He was to be included in a Signal group chat called Houthi PC Small Group. Opening message, Mike Waltz, team, establishing a principals group for the coordination on Houthis, especially over the next 72 hours. Now, this included representatives for Marco Rubio, Tulsi Gabbard, J.D. Vance, Joe Kent, Pete Hegseth, and John Ratcliffe, all the heavy hitters. For those unfamiliar, principals committee generally...
You said representatives, but like literally these people, the principals, not their representatives.
Yep, so I'm getting into what a principals is. So the principals committee generally refers to a group of the senior most national security officials, including the secretaries of defense, state, and the treasury, as well as the director of CIA. These were representatives on behalf of these individuals, but the names in the chat as he posted were for, say, Marco Rubio or whatever. So if you see J.D. Vance in the chat, it was his representative or maybe him speaking through representative. So Friday morning, Waltz basically says, we're good to go. The big takeaway, I think, from the first one was that J.D. Vance pushed back on these messages. And some would say, does this mean there's a difference in strategy? Are they not all aligned? He essentially was saying, I'm doing this economic event in Michigan. I think we're making a mistake. 3% of trade runs through the Suez. 40% of European trade does. There's a real risk that the public doesn't understand this or why it's necessary. The strongest reason to do this, as POTUS said, is to send a message. I'm not sure the president is aware of how consistent this is with his message on Europe right now. There's further risk that we see a moderate to severe spike in oil prices. He basically goes on to say, I'm willing to support the consensus here, but I'd just like to voice his concerns. Quickly, we go back to Michael Waltz here and basically saying, we're going to do this, right? And so these chats, the Atlantic articles behind paywall, so I'll show the original chats at this point. this is what it looks like for our YouTube audience. And if you guys would ever like to join this live of our breakdowns, YouTube, 11 a.m. Eastern time, subscribe to the Loopcast. But you can see like picture of Pete Hegseth here. You can see the text here. He's also frustrated about the European freeloading, as he says in this chat. SM, Stephen Miller. And then basically after it all goes down, you get the emojis from Michael Waltz.
The emojis from Mike Waltz. I mean,
who among us does not have someone in group chats that speaks exclusively in emojis? I know I certainly do. And then Houthi PC small group, average male group chat name. I've been added to group chats very similar to this. But basically, the strikes go through.
Houthi this.
Yeah. Okay, so the strikes go through, and then you're starting to get a little celebration here in this Signal chat. I think at first people, and I have Kyle Seraphin here, shout out Kyle Seraphin, were suspicious about the legitimacy of Jeffrey Goldberg's version of events. Basically because he showed some chats, he didn't show the whole thing. People were like, hey, why did you not release the whole thing, left and right? Why didn't you release the whole thing? You had it. You're saying that there were specific war plan details in this chat. It's up to the public to know. And two things Jeffrey Goldberg said that was interesting. The first being, I left the chat after this was over, knowing that it would send a notification to Mike Waltz that I left the chat. Basically giving them the heads up, hey, this was breached. I shouldn't have been here.
Right.
Exactly. And then the second thing that he said was, it wasn't right for me to share. Yes, this was shoddy. They shouldn't have been doing it. It wasn't right for me to share all the details. So that's where we leave.
That's
the
actually
situation.
The story, right? Like a communist reporter having like one little tiny ounce of inkling of.
Well,
breaking news. Jeff Goldberg has a
interesting.
What?
I've watched so much.
Some discretion. Wow.
Well, to be fair, like if I could just interject where my headspace was at this point in the story yesterday morning, I was like, I'm having a hard time believing this because as you mentioned before, Jeff Goldberg from The Atlantic, he was the original purveyor of the suckers and losers hoax that Trump calls veterans suckers and losers. Right. The hoax that like he refused to pay for this veteran's $60,000 funeral because he hates Mexicans. And Snopes itself, I did a little bit of digging. Snopes itself, which is a more left-wing leaning
communist
fact-checking organization, they can't even stand Jeff Goldberg. I mean, they're like, there is nothing, everything is rated unproven because there's no corroboration, blah, blah, blah. So without the corroboration, yesterday morning, I was in the camp of, oh my gosh, this is totally Trump's 4D chess going on. So that's where it was. And then, Tom, I'll let you pick up the story from there.
Yeah, so you and President Trump are on the same page. So after this story dropped, they asked President Trump, what did you think? Yeah, exactly. This is what Trump had to say about it.
Your reaction to the story in The Atlantic that said that some of your top cabinet officials and aides had been discussing very sensitive material through Signal and included an Atlantic reporter for that. What is your response to that?
I don't know anything about it. I'm not a big fan of The Atlantic. To me, it's a magazine that's going out of business. I think it's not much of a magazine, but I know nothing about it. You're saying that they had what?
They were using Signal to coordinate on sensitive materials and
he is trolling so hard.
Having to do with what? What were they talking about?
With the Houthis.
The Houthis? You mean the attack on the Houthis?
Right.
Well, it couldn't have been very effective because the attack was very effective. I can tell you that. I don't know anything about it. You're telling me about it for the first time.
You're telling me about it for the first time. This was after the first article dropped. And at this point, Josh still yawning. He's like, what are we talking about here?
Bored to absolute tears.
Hegseth responds and says, this guy's a hack. And Trump actually came out and said he would not be firing Mike Waltz, who confirmed was the person that added Jeffrey Goldberg to the chat. Some people were speculating that there was someone else with the initials JG. I believe it was like a trade person that he would have. It really, I don't fully understand. I don't think anyone fully understands.
Not holding water at this point.
Right. How it was. So I will say now, the story gets interesting. Conveniently, there was a Senate Intel Committee hearing that was already pre-scheduled for yesterday. And it was supposed to be an annual assessment of threats around the world. Of course. This drops yesterday, and this is all people could talk about, right? There were other things discussed in the Intel Committee meeting, but I mean, majority of this is, and of course I had to head over to Democrats Win Media for this clip, but this was basically a summary of how that intelligence meeting went.
And would not information about the timing of airstrikes allow a military to pre-position or cue air defense systems to shoot down enemy aircraft?
Is this the first time a guy spoke in English?
I think, Senator, from our perspective, any advance warning is something that we certainly are trying to protect.
Director Radcliffe, this was a huge mistake, correct?
No.
No.
A national political...
Hold on.
No, you
Let me
hold
answer.
on. No, Director
Answer.
Radcliffe.
No, you
I
hold
asked
on.
a yes or no question, and now you hold on. A national political reporter
You can characterize it how you want.
was made privy
The White
to
House has
sensitive
made
information
clear
about
that there
imminent
was an
military
inadvertent
operations against a
mistake,
foreign terrorist
An inadvertent
organization.
mistake of adding a reporter.
And that wasn't a huge
to a
mistake?
seal.
That wasn't a huge
Well, I
mistake?
think they characterize
This is
it
an
as a
embarrassment.
mistake.
This is utterly unprofessional. There's been no apology. There has been no recognition of the gravity of this error. And by the way, we will get the full transcript of this chain.
I like when
and your
Congress care about
testimony
national
will be
security.
measured carefully against
Yeah.
its content. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Josh, I know you're chomping at the bit here, but
I
this
also
is how
hate that it's like they interrupt each other. Like, you can each call each other dog crap, but just let me finish my sentence. I would be so angry.
Yeah, I would love to see you in a Senate Intel committee
That
hearing,
would be
or just
pretty
a
great.
committee hearing it at all. Tulsi
There's a
Gabbard
reason
goes
why
on to
Brian's up for it, not me.
Yeah, very true. So Tulsi Gabbard goes in and she says there was no classified material shared in these group chats. No classified material was the exact wording what she said. So fast forward to this morning, Jeffrey Goldberg, who at this point I actually was like, he has some CIA ties. And I was like, what journalist leaves a group chat in which you could potentially get more scoops? Like an industrious journal. I'm not even saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying this is how journalism works. You could say, I got an anonymous source, I verified or whatever. Think about all the information you get from this. He leaves. So I'm like, potential CIA spook. He still could be. I don't know. But basically what happened is we get another article this morning and a little bit of a change in tune on war plans. We change it to attack plans. So here's the exact headline. Here are the attack plans that Trump's advisor shared on Signal, essentially saying, I got to listen to a day of the Trump administration deny that the material is classified, that there's nothing shared, that there's no coordinates, that there's nothing. And I think that's wrong. And I think at this point, I need to bring forward what was shared in the Signal chat. So you get the exact screenshots. And of course, they put it behind paywall, which is hilarious. Like, well done, Atlantic. But yes, so you're seeing some things that were not in the previous one at this point. I'm scrolling through to find here in the full messages.
Yeah, there's just a difference between
yeah.
classified and, intelligence that they don't necessarily want to share. Like
Right.
if they're planning on attacking these Yemeni people on Thursday and it's, a few days ahead of time, I mean, they would basically call that classified because they don't want people to know about it. But it's not like, here's the secret agent's real, our secret agent in Yemen who, whose name is really Bob Phillips from Topeka, Kansas or something like that.
Yeah.
And this is his photo. Like that is obvious, like classified. Like that would be disastrous if that came out, as opposed to advanced warning of, military strikes, which is also intelligence you don't want to share, but it's a different level of quote classified. And that was the point that they were making.
Yep. So
Right.
let me go over the synthesis here. Basically, Jeffrey Goldberg claims in this article that he reached out to the Trump administration saying, I have these group chats. Can you speak to them? We're going to release them. We'd like a statement, basically. Should I release them? Would you object to releasing? And Caroline Leavitt said, there is nothing classified in those. We would not like you to release it, but there is nothing classified. And he's like, okay, say less. Nothing's classified. I'm going to put it out. And so the things that people have been latching on to is from Pete Hegseth, time now 11:44 ET, whether it's favorable, just confirm with CENTCOM we are a go for mission launch. F-18's launch at 12:15 ET, 13:45 trigger-based, F-18 first strike window starts. So basically a schedule of the hit that's about to happen. And again, just for timeline's sake.
About a 30-minute advance warning.
Yes, this got
that's what
to
it would
Jeffrey
be.
Goldberg before the strikes happened. So he knew about it.
But you're saying 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So he
30
knew about it
minutes ahead of
before.
time.
It's important sequentially to bring up. And so now we get the leave it. JD Vance had a tweet on it too. And basically what the administration is now latching onto is that it wasn't a war plan, that it wasn't classified, and that they actually, the Atlantic and Goldberg backtracked from war plan to attack plans. And this is maybe where the debate begins. I will say something for Josh. I think this semantic argument is very weak. I think that at minimum, Mike Waltz should be fired for adding a journalist, national journalist, to a group chat. I don't have a huge issue with Signal being used, or I don't even dispute that it's classified, not classified, because they could have declassified it technically. I think the security leak and even just a basic intelligence from Mike Waltz, who I disagree with politically as well because he's kind of a neocon war hawk, someone needs to get fired for this. No one was fired over Afghanistan, and Trump ran on that. There's no accountability in the government. No one gets fired. People just get promoted. This is people are bringing up the Hillary Clinton's email scandal. I think it's the same level. I do.
Same level?
Yes.
I mean,
I
both
think
the
it's the same
analogies
level.
are absolutely.
Okay.
Hillary Clinton
No.
didn't talk about war in her private email server. I'm saying both are bad. Why are we treating this as though this is like a laughable, not even a big issue?
The only way this would rise to the level of Hillary Clinton is if somehow you can prove that Mike Waltz did this on purpose because he was in collusion with Jonah Goldberg to materially damage the Trump.
Jeffrey Goldberg.
Jeffrey Goldberg. I got all worked up there. So I like comparing this to Hillary Clinton habitually using personal email, which is not secure, to transmit like state secret classified information.
And to do deals. That's what she was doing.
Do deals with it for her own benefit does not rise unless you can show me the case that Mike Waltz did this on purpose for his own gain. I don't think that's what happened.
I think there's a possibility. I can't prove
I mean,
it right
obviously
now,
it's a possibility, but the evidence there doesn't
where's
suggest
the evidence? Yeah, go for it. Find it.
Mike Waltz is now lying about knowing him, not knowing him. Jeffrey Goldberg says he knows him. I think there's a potential angle that this happens. But guys, say it's warplane, say it's attack planes. They knew where Jeffrey Goldberg, someone not in the highest levels of intelligence, knew a strike was going to happen hours before it was going to happen. Can you see a scenario in which this is a humongous failure? This is like someone needs. I think that needs a roll.
That is a mistake. It's a failure. But like to compare that to the absolute total botched junior varsity complete disaster of leaving Afghanistan and having no plan, just like get the hell out and leaving all of our tanks or warships or not ships, but our tanks and ammunition, and not like getting our people out securely and letting 13 people die. That is a massive, massive scandal. And the American people treated it as that because they realized that is absolute catastrophe. It was like so careless and reckless. And it's like, how could you not, like, as opposed to accidentally adding somebody on a group chat and allowing information to get out there ahead of time. And again, it's not like the information was like, we're going to bomb them 2 weeks from now. It was 30 minutes. So the ability for us to be caught with our pants down on that was probably about less than 1%. So again, this is
are you saying
it's not quite a nothing burger, but it's not a scandal like that gets me even awake at night. My goodness.
Yeah. See, okay. So I think I am somewhere in the middle, as I often am, because the thorn between the roses. I think that there is a place here where there needs to be some kind of consequence because it was a failure. We can't have, the head of the CIA and we can't have the vice president and Marco Rubio on a chat to which like a scumbag like the Atlantic editor is being added inadvertently. So yeah, I think we need to find out how that happened. Was it Waltz who added him, or was it like his assistant who was setting up the chat for him and like somehow made this mistake? There needs to be some kind of head has to roll. There has to be some kind of consequence. But this call like we're seeing from all of the talking heads this morning of like Pete Hegseth should be fired. You're like, oh, and how does this possibly rise to that level of firing national security or blaming Tulsi Gabbard? Like this, let's get a sense of proportion, which we're not going to get from the left, and actually deal with this in a way that makes sense and is proportional to what was actually happening. There's also a call here that like it was totally, irresponsible of them to have this conversation on Signal of all things. And again, like you said, I don't think so. I mean,
I think it is.
Okay. Are there other platforms that are more secure than Signal?
Yes, you're supposed to, I think it's like SCIF, SCIF.
Run by the deep state?
You're supposed to be communicating on encrypted government. So first off, all these phones were personal. What they were corresponding on were personal. They were all over the country, even potentially around the world. you are supposed to go into your encrypted room, not encrypted room, like a protected room, work on encrypted government devices, especially if we're talking about war. I just can't believe that you guys are glossing over like, nah, it was only a half hour before. Are you serious?
No,
like,
not glossing over it, but also not being like, it's the same as Hillary.
No,
like
okay.
Or Afghanistan. I mean, give me a break.
But guys, give me a break for giving bombing plans out a half hour before to Jeffrey Goldberg. Like, if this was, I'm just trying to imagine a scenario.
I guess what I'm wondering, what are you saying? Like,
I'm saying Mike
Waltz what rationale do we think that this is an acceptable behavior? We're not saying that. It was a boneheaded mistake. And if you're saying that they should go to these SCIF devices, I'm like,
yes,
100% agree. Sounds great.
Glad we're on the same page. Yeah.
So what?
But
Good,
now
do that.
to me, but now there needs to be accountability.
Next.
Yep.
So Josh, you're not in favor of accountability for anyone.
No.
Okay. So like, if someone makes a boneheaded mistake,
which this was,
yes, Donald Trump has the decision to make. Does he fire him? He could fire him and say accountability, or he could say, I'm going to give you, I think this was a major boneheaded mistake. I'm going to let it pass on this one. And then if it happens again, you're gone. Like whatever. I mean, that's his call. Sounds good.
Quick fact check too in the chat there from Tony. The phones were actually government issue.
No, I believe they were personal. I don't think that's been confirmed.
Okay. We're doing a fact check on that one. But also,
someone needs to fact check that.
someone
I'm
else.
almost positive there was possibility of them being personal.
All right, we're fact checking. We're going for it. I think that there's another point in the chat. I've lost it at this point, but someone made the point that this is all election fodder, and that's what makes me so angry. And I think there does need to be accountability.
What do you mean election fodder? What do you mean?
Well, so when J.D. Vance starts his campaign for 2028, they're going to dredge this up and be like, J.D. Vance was the stupidest vice president. Because remember that first month of when he was there in this? And
I actually don't think that will be as effective.
It's not even going to be brought up in the midterms. I mean,
I want to be charitable about Josh's position on this as well. Like, I think the reason he's yawning is because you think hard politics. This is going to probably be forgotten about by midterms. It's not a sticking point. It's not going to be
forgotten by summer.
Right. The Afghanistan problem. I generally agree with that. I think from a principles point of view, like if this was a military personnel member, if this was a member of the Navy, they'd be fired. They'd potentially be court-martialed. They might be in jail. But why are we not applying the same standard to people calling strikes here just because they're high brass in the administration? Like, to me, someone needs to be held accountable for this.
Well, look, if you want to say because of that same standard, go ahead and fire Mike Waltz. I mean, whatever. That's fine. I mean, that Trump decides not to. And the thing is, the commander in chief could also give clemency on a soldier if he did it inadvertently. You know what I mean? Like a judge, like if you go to a military court and they found out that the mistake was absolutely, a boneheaded mistake, that doesn't mean it's automatic that the soldier or Marine or sailor would be let go too. That there is some sense where they would go, okay, we believe this is a boneheaded mistake, and you get like basically a reprimand or something like that. And we're not gonna put you in jail. We're not gonna throw you out. But so, I mean, even then, our system can have a little clemency.
Yeah, and maybe my other issue with this too is the response from the Trump administration knowing the contents of this and just having an argument now, semantic argument. Well, he backtracked from war plans to attack details. Why couldn't someone just come forward and say a tremendous security leak happened and it was a terrible mistake? We will be holding people accountable for this. That being said, none of this technically is classified. It just would be nice to get some acknowledgement. I know that we're so deeply entrenched in the political partisanship of it is you can't admit that you're wrong, but I think it would go a long way for the country and people within to say this was bad.
Well, I mean, the Trump administration did say, Waltz made a mistake. Mm-hmm. Waltz said he made a mistake. I mean, so like, it's not like, the Biden Hillary Clinton approach would be like to pretend like nothing, actually went wrong and they didn't make a mistake. So this is measurably different than the previous administration and or Hillary, the way Hillary does something. Like she's like, what? I didn't do anything. Did you wipe the servers? Like what? With a cloth? I mean, it's like absolute lying through their bloody teeth. Whereas this was like, looks like Mike accidentally added this journalist that wasn't supposed to be there. That was a big mistake. And, we could let information out there ahead of time about our attack plans, but they weren't like top secret stuff. Like that's what I'm getting at. They made a distinction. Like it's information you would never want to share. Yes, of course.
Right.
But it's not like, oh my gosh, here's the list of all the secret agents that are in the Middle East. Like, oh my gosh, that would be dreadful. That would be even if it was still a boneheaded mistake, the consequences for that might be, you know what? Actually, I'm sorry,
People
you
die.
are fired, because there's some things where like that was kind of dumb, and we're gonna let it, we're gonna wrap you on the wrist, and we're not gonna fire you. But if you like let out a massive secret like that, they might be like, yeah, bro, nice knowing you. Pack your bags, you're out of here.
Erica, sorry, you think you did something to say?
No, I'm going to agree with Josh on that.
I think the bigger problem with this is that it's now going to be used to go after Hegseth and Gabbard and Ratcliffe as it has. And I think it probably could have been minimized sooner. I think that it just feels like in this kind of media mastery we've just become accustomed to Trump having, now that it's getting up to Hegseth, it's getting up to Gabbard. They're clearly using this now as, all right, we need to tarnish these people. We need to delegitimize these people. And I think the way that it was handled basically just played into the hand of people that want to do that.
I mean, I said that this story would be off the news by summer. I guess I want to change my assessment. I think it'll be over by Easter.
He's become more convinced of this.
Oh, man.
Yes. Yeah, I think the language has become now like these people are incompetent, and I do think that it's on purpose. Like this happened in a way to get at Hegseth and Tulsi, who did have two of the more contentious confirmation processes in all of Trump's cabinet, because I mean they really are hated so much. And in a way with Hegseth, I'm like they've already eviscerated the man and hung him out to dry. I don't know, like. Yeah.
Are you seeing these comments?
What do we got?
Tony's saying that Tom is taking Ossoff's point on this. It's probably because they're both like these, Gen Z types.
Ouch.
Our first Gen Z senator. But,
hey, can I just stop for a second and acknowledge Pogo? Pogo has done Gen Z proud today. He is wearing a suit and tie. Jacket and tie for the pod, and this is a first. I believe.
We got a funeral later on.
You were
a little sartorial.
No, I had to one up Josh's little Newsmax get up.
I thought he's been reading Refine.
I was trying to, Refine. I've definitely been reading Refine, then I was trying to sleight of hand to make people think my opinions are more legitimate through my dress. And Erica is calling out my game, and now the gamut might be up.
You look good, Pogo.
Thank you. Okay, so before we get into our next section here, got to share thank you again to our sponsor, Title Lock. Did you know that American homeowners have over $32 trillion in equity, and criminals are targeting it with a growing scam the FBI calls house stealing? Scammers can transfer your title out of your name using a one-page document they file at the county. Then they can take out loans against it or even sell it behind your back. And the scariest part, you won't find out until collection or foreclosure notices start arriving in your mailbox, leaving you with a financial and legal nightmare. The best way to protect your equity is with Home Title Lock's exclusive $1 million triple lock protection. The service offers 24/7 monitoring, urgent alerts, and if fraud should occur, their U.S.-based restoration team will spend up to $1 million to fix the fraud and restore your life. So, when's the last time you checked on your title? If you're like me, the answer is never. I also don't own a home, so that would contribute. And that's exactly what scammers are counting on. The good news is we've partnered with Home Title Lock to offer you all 30% off their services. Go to HometitleLock.com/loopcast to save 30%, and you'll also get a free title history report to ensure you're not already a victim. And make sure you check out the $1 million triple lock protection details when you get there. Click on the description below. That's HometitleLock.com/loopcast. Thank you to Home Title Lock.
Hey, I'm inspired. I really am. These scammers are like the lowest of the low. Someone tried to steal one of my minor children's identity this year, and it was horrible. So this I'm like, I need to go check on my title. I'm going to check out Home Title Lock.
Yeah. Speaking of scams, have you guys
wants to steal my identity? They can have all my debt.
Please take me.
Like all the things they say, like don't leave your car unlocked. I leave the keys in the car.
Please take the
car. So the most recent scam is you'll get a text about going through a toll road, and it'll be like, oh, you have unpaid tolls. I've got like 8 of those, and it just started happening a month ago.
I keep paying them. They keep coming back.
I know.
That's
well, and they're small amounts, so it looks right. It's like you owe 80 cents. You owe $2.67. I had a couple of those from Massachusetts, and I just was like, no, I don't give Massachusetts money.
I mean, I'm almost so angry about it. I want to get into politics just to give the life sentence to anyone involved in that scam. True.
Use your
Political
platform.
power.
Speak your truth, Tom.
You've
I'll
got the
speak my
pie.
truth, Josh. That's why I alphaed you and chose the first topic, even though you said it was a yawn and going to be
It was boring.
chosen.
I admit.
But Josh, I'm coming back around. Okay, I'm coming back around to what you thought was much more interesting.
And
I'm
here's
excited for you to
Mercer's
share
pick
your
for the show.
perspective.
All right.
Okay, so right now we get into the Trump administration planning to freeze family planning grants. Was that line from the Wall Street Journal?
Yeah.
Another way of saying that is tens of millions of dollars in federal funding for Planned Parenthood and other groups would be cut off while the administration examines their DEI efforts.
What does this have to do with Al Capone, you might ask?
What does
Are
it?
you going to tell us?
Before we get to that, Josh, let's hear what Trump has to say about potentially the freeze in funds.
I just want to follow up on that. If Planned Parenthood is defunded, would you look into the harvesting of baby organs that they've done throughout the years and maybe go after some criminal prosecution on that?
Well, I think you're talking about a subject that is a heated subject, and we'll look into it. We're going to look into everything, but that's certainly a subject that's been debated for a long time, and we will look into it, yeah.
Mr. President, I just want to follow up on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good. I mean, he's at least, saying he's going to look into it. By the way, right there, you'll notice the little Fox News line at the bottom of that said, President Trump was talking when he was meeting with his ambassadors. Our own President Brian Birch was there at that cabinet meeting as the nominee for the ambassador to the Holy See. So continue to pray for Brian as he goes through the Senate confirmation process. He's still at Catholic vote until he becomes, hopefully gets confirmed by the Senate and does great service to our country. But
Josh, did you say Goldberg in the committee members? Someone calling you out in the chat. Goldberg is not a committee member for. Go ahead.
So anyway, with Planned Parenthood, what does that have to do with Al Capone? I mean, Al Capone was a criminal. He bought off cops, judges, and politicians. Total corrupt, person. Had people murdered.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, they could only get Al Capone on tax evasion.
Yep.
Look, if they can only shut down federal funding for Planned Parenthood because of they're invoking and using policies on DEI, hey, I'll take it. I mean, obviously, I would like, as the reporter said, I would love for them to be shut down because they were trafficking in baby body parts. They were actually selling organs, and that is like, I mean, obviously killing them is the worst, but like, the killing them, you're like, well, is it really a baby? Is it really a human life? But then when you see the organs and you're like selling them, $9.99 for this organ, it's like, well, obviously it's a human now, because why would it have value if it's just tissue?
Mm-hmm.
That would be the reason why. It's like, I remember thinking that when David Daleiden in his expose brought forth this, just grisly scandal of Planned Parenthood selling body parts, I thought maybe this would waken the conscience and get people to go, man, what are we doing here? Why are we allowing this organization to receive hundreds of millions of dollars every year?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, my heart sank a little bit that year when I realized that it would not actually in any way measurably move the needle. That was pretty sad.
And then Kamala Harris utilized a very obscure law to basically persecute journalists. So
she went after
the guy
not the grisly organization selling body parts.
No.
When this expose happened, she was like, let me persecute the journalists
get the
who found this out.
Right.
So that was very disheartening. If we ultimately freeze, and that's what's going on right now, we're freezing $120 million to Planned Parenthood affiliates because they wanted to, Musk and Trump want to investigate whether or not they're engaged in DEI efforts.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, if that's the way, if that's the reason that works politically to stop them, I'll take it. Sure wish it would be like, because they're murdering babies and selling their body parts. That's why we're doing it. That'd be nice, but
well,
I'll take a win however I get it.
They're in the gender transition game now too. They sell puberty blockers, hormones to kids. They get them on
they're making that shift, I think, primarily because somewhere like 70% of abortions now are committed against unborn children through medicine.
Right.
And so you're not getting surgical abortions as much, which is why that was Planned Parenthood's money-making business for the last several decades. So they're shifting, they like it because they want more babies murdered. But in terms of a profit center, they're having to switch to transitioning of gender ideology. So if you can't kill the kid, have them, mutilate their genitals. Like, how are
Yeah.
this is like so obviously satanic. It's unbelievable.
It's so lucrative, very lucrative business. Yeah, I think, like Josh said, I went back and I watched some of the old David Daleiden expose videos, and it is like looking into the mouth of hell. It's horrible, horrible demonic stuff, and it was almost in that category of, this is so horrible it can't be happening, and people kind of shut down. I feel like that, like, they couldn't even believe that we would have. I watched one video of an abortionist coming. She does 24-week abortions on fully formed children. She comes on and she's like, "Oh, do you want full baby body parts?" And the undercover journalist was like, "Yeah, we're looking for like full," they call it intact tissue, right? Which is a full baby body. She's like, "Oh yeah, I usually, when I deliver the dead baby, I try to leave them intact because the mother sometimes wants footprints and handprints to remember it by." And you're just like, this is so horrible and grotesque that I shut down, right? It's hard not to become like hardened to that. But this woman's on there bragging about it, how she can get these children. But like Josh said, if we can get them on, they won't conform to DEI, somehow that can be latched onto and something that we can come together on just to shut down. Cutting $120 million or freezing $120 million will save children's lives. There will be women who do not abort their children because that just slows them down enough to think twice. And so I'm here for it. But America, we've got to convert our culture, because this is happening, and it's happening in our cities regularly, and we can't persist as a society when we're built on this kind of a foundation.
There is something kind of poetic about a organization founded by eugenicists potentially getting sunk by discriminating employment based on race.
Mm-hmm. It's a little poetic.
Yeah, Margaret Sanger.
She
is a piece of work. When we say somebody was in bed with the Nazis, in her case, we literally mean
we literally mean
in bed.
Not speaking metaphorically.
Yeah. It always is fun talking to people that it reminds me of when people in politics will name bills like the "We
Those
love democracy
acronyms.
and anyone against it sucks" bill. And then how could you vote against the "We love democracy and everyone that votes against it sucks" bill? Like, you must suck. It's like Planned Parenthood. You talk to people that aren't familiar. Like, Planned Parenthood, that sounds kind of nice. Don't they help people plan families? They're like, you want to Google Margaret Sanger? She wasn't too fond of certain races.
Or families.
Or families.
It's interesting, though, like the left, one of their great saints is Woodrow Wilson in the progressive era. Worst president of the United States, even worse than Joe Biden. And they were willing to say, rewrite, actually, he was pretty bad. He was kind of racist. And they were willing to admit that he had a tarnished record. They wouldn't do it for Margaret Sanger, though, because, again, for the left, it's all the sexual revolution.
Mm-hmm. All comes down to it.
Amen. Erica, you had the next section here.
Speaking of the sexual revolution.
Yes.
Little segue there.
Excited. Take me in. What we got going on?
So I'm about to open your eyes, gentlemen, to a little bit of Catholic female infighting that's been going on for several years now. And we had an interesting exchange in the Wall Street Journal between, we have on one side, or, we're all on the same side, ladies. That's what I'm going to try and make my message here. Erica Bachiochi, who's the author of a book called The Rights of Women, which I do think is totally worth reading, about the history of the feminist movement. In the Wall Street Journal, she had an op-ed titled John Paul II, the Feminist Pope. And anyone listening should immediately feel all sorts of jaundice welling up within them and be like, a little tension there. The feminist pope. And I'll try and be fair. This is her argument in the op-ed. So she's pointing to the rise of alternative, mostly Catholic influencers, this wave of podcasters, social media voices called the alternative magisterium by some, shaping young Catholic views, sometimes promoting, she says, misogynistic and anti-feminist ideologies. Her prime example is my friend Tim Gordon. He's not my friend. I'm just saying.
Wait, I was going to say, are you friends with him?
No, I'm not. Tim Gordon, who
he's pretty extreme.
Yeah, he is. You can pull up this little tweet of his because this is kind of what he does. He goes through papal statements of the past where there's anything that hints that women should only be in the home. And he puts a big papal photograph on him and puts that, and there's like endless thread of, look, all the popes said that women should stay at home. They shouldn't leave home without their husband's consent. And he describes marriage as a, quote, friendship between unequals. So forget your equally yoked movement there. They also have a lot of skepticism about John Paul II's theology of the body. And Erica's contention, the other Erica Bacchiacchi, her contention is that this is actually against Catholic teaching and ultimately harmful to to women in the church. So she talks about actual catechism teaching upholding the equal dignity of men and women, and she points to St. John Paul II's call for a new feminism to say, you know, he's a feminist, as the title suggests, which I'm not sure she wrote. And she talks about how we've mislabeled feminism. So while rejecting radical feminist ideologies, we need to avoid dismissing all forms of feminism. Here's where the crisis comes in. Not the crisis.
Sorry, would you like me to mansplain this to you, or do you want?
Yeah, can you explain to me what I just said?
Okay,
That would be
sorry.
super helpful. You're
Go ahead.
interrupting me. Stop it. I think that's what
Yeah,
Alec
Tom,
Baldwin's
you
wife
should
said.
you should
Stop
let
interrupting.
you should let the woman talk and just ignore her. That's
Yeah.
the way it's supposed to be.
So Erica
right, go
ends
for it.
with this. Here's her ending paragraph, and then I'll set up the other side. She writes, the Pope may not regard, John Paul II might not regard as positively the process of women's liberation as it has unfolded over the last 30 years, so since the sexual revolution. He might regard feminism in its current form as unredeemable. But whether we call a movement that promotes the full human flourishing of women a new feminism or something else, it's clear that the church must redouble its efforts to defend the equal dignity of women, not only from outside her walls, but from within too, against the Tim Gordons. Now, the reason this is interesting is because Erica Bacchiacchi has been an ardent supporter of this idea of the new feminism, that feminism is redeemable. It just went off the rails in the sexual revolution with second wave feminism. On the other side, we have Carrie Gress, author of The End of Woman, which you should also read. So she writes back in the Wall Street Journal in the letters. She writes, the new feminists, Erica Bacchiacchi, have worked to define their project for 40 years, emphasizing equality while repackaging feminist concepts of autonomy. Meanwhile, feminism as autonomy continues to flourish. The pro-life movement is waning, and Catholics in the pew are as confused about womanhood as everyone else. As Ms. Bacchiacchi notes, the Pope may not look positively on the past 30 years. Has the new feminism that he called for added any clarity? So this is the big controversy among Catholic women. I think that on the one hand, they're all saying the same thing, that we need to return to an authentic view of woman, of the human person, of men, as articulated in church teaching consistently throughout the ages. The difference is, do we need a new feminism? It was John Paul II, a feminist pope. Does the word matter? And I think Carrie very much is saying, look, we need to divest ourselves of the feminist terminology and the lingo of the feminism movement, because root and branch, it was diametrically opposed to the Catholic view of what a woman is, of what a human person is. Whereas Erica is saying, no, we need to keep on using the term feminism. She's conceding a little bit here, which is new news in this controversy. But maybe we call it something else.
Can I ask you a question, Erica?
Yeah, please ask me a question.
That it just might be worth. So I know that is there 4 waves of feminism at this point? I feel like there's a new one.
Oh my gosh, there's so many waves of feminism. I mean, you would say basically there's still just 2, right? There's the
only 2?
original. Well, there's original feminism with like Wollstonecraft. Then you get the suffrage movement, and then you have second wave feminism, which would be sexual revolution. Then you have trans. I wouldn't even call that. I mean, the full flowering of the feminist movement maybe is the whole trans movement. So I guess if you're going to put all of that under the sexual revolution, the war of the sexes, you could say we're on the 4th wave.
So first wave just to give take it on to bare bones.
Yeah.
First wave feminism, I think a lot of people in their minds are like, that was just women wanting to vote.
In a way,
to be able to own property
and
do
own
economic transactions without getting approval of their husband or whatever.
Yeah,
Okay.
and to work outside the home in terms of like,
which would have been just fine.
academia.
Then they get their credit cards, and that's when everything got.
So what's the then second wave feminism was
That's when you get into Betty
sexual revolution.
Friedan. Yeah, Betty Friedan and the sexual revolution of the 60s and 70s, where it's very much woman against man, women adopting all of the so-called toxic masculinity of like, we're going to now dominate men. We're going to make ourselves, I mean, the pill being a huge part of that we're going to sterilize ourselves, reject our fertility, reject motherhood. And that's the only way to get quote unquote equality is through domination now of men.
So I think most people, Catholics of goodwill, would reject that second wave kind of part and parcel. Like that's not even really a debate topic. So the real debate here is, should we claim the fruits of first wave feminism? Was it a good thing to begin with? And then the alternate magisterium of people going back and be like, women shouldn't be voting, women shouldn't be doing this and that. Like, so I guess then I ask you, between the means of Bacchiacchi and Gress, do you think the first wave feminism, the term feminism, that is worth claiming when you're talking about this Catholic idea of true like equal in human dignity, equality, I think would probably be the end term.
Yeah, I think that for me, I think that first wave feminism was responding to a very real sense of injustice and spiritual poverty that women were experiencing in primarily Protestant Calvinist circles, Victorian, spiritual poverty, material poverty, and there was a real response to a non-Catholic view, a non-authentic view of who a woman is and what she's for. I do believe, though, that feminism and continuing to call Catholics who are pro-woman, like just authentic woman, feminist, I do think the word has become, irredeemably associated with second wave feminism. So I'm more of the line of, we need to just have our own language and return to the language of authentic womanhood, authentic femininity. Like if you go through Edith Stein's writings, and I think she's the prime example of an authentic vision of what a woman is in her essays on woman. She's not using the term like feminist or dominance or, autonomy or all of that. She's actually expressing the maternal genius of what is stamped on every woman's being physically and spiritually. So I would much rather adopt her language and not say, well, we need a new feminism. No, we need an authentic understanding of who a woman is and what we are, the role that we
sometimes
play.
It's fun to hijack another word, but hijacking feminist would be so difficult. Like Mary, the Virgin Mary is a feminist. It's like people are like, what are you talking about? It doesn't make any sense. But if you say, the Blessed Virgin Mary is the embodiment of what it means to be feminine, then that's absolutely 100% correct. And then when you start talking about the Holy Family, you think to yourself, let's look at Joseph. To me, it just strikes me as bizarre that, maybe I'm sure Mary said to Joseph, I'd like to go to my cousin's house. And he's like, okay, yeah. And, you would tell your spouse you're leaving. Or did he go with her? Maybe. This Tim Gordon stuff kind of strikes me as, I don't know, a little unusual.
A little too
I don't get that. But to me, Joseph is the ultimate embodiment of, human masculinity. And you know what? Why does every guy like him? Because how can you not respect someone who works so hard to take care of Mary and Jesus, right? And women, of course, love St. Joseph because he doesn't say anything.
He was silent. I knew that was coming.
Back to you made the point on the word, hijacking the word. I think I need help fleshing out this analogy, but I think that instinctually why there was such a big fight over the word marriage as it applied to law, like even in the word itself, the activists trying to say that a man being with a man legally is marriage, it still can't escape the origins of the word. Like the word was around and fully understood, naturally understood by people before these kind of bizarre iterations of marriage. And the real marriage advocates were like, no, this isn't marriage and it shouldn't be treated as such. But now all the new activists are like, yes, it is. But even if you say it, you instinctually hear it as kind of weird or off. Like you hear it and you're like, this doesn't make sense. So I feel like with feminism, like if we were to hijack it now, I guess, as like Catholics that want to have a true understanding of women, you still would kind of have the connotations with the word. And I know someone brought up in the chat here too, that book Carrie Gress wrote talked about some of the occult origins of feminism. And that is hard to escape as well. So even if there were good things, as someone said, like a move towards a more timely social justice to women and human dignity, I think the movement and all it encapsulates, if you took it back, would still carry all of those connotations. I don't think it's really worth claiming at this point.
And honestly, like, I think that a lot of the women I work with and people who work with Erica and Carrie at EPPC, we can advocate for policy and changes in public life, for family policy, people who are caretakers policy, that, you know, we don't need to use the word feminist to be like, feminists unite around family caretaker policy, in order to just say, no, this is just a good thing for society and for women and for men. This doesn't have to be a feminist movement in order to effect changes that do need to happen in society to acknowledge the work of homemakers and caretakers and mothers who stay home to care for small children. We don't need to be like new feminists to do that.
And it gets to the idea that like environmentalism has become something completely crazy. So like, why rescue that word when I could talk about conservation? Like I could try to say we should take care of the resources and not have this, you know, human hating crazy communist movement. So that's the same thing with feminism. Why would I try to recapture that word? I mean, I believe that all women, all men are created in the image of God. Therefore, they're afforded amazing dignity. We get these discussions about, well, what about, you know, equality through the law? And like, it's like, I mean, do they not have the right to vote? Of course, they should have the right to vote. I believe that. But like, I just wish there would be a little bit more of an understanding. Like when you hear these WNBA players who think I should be paid as much as the NBA stars, it's like, and therefore this is a great injustice. It's like, dude, did you sell any tickets? I'm sorry, wait, no? Oh, okay. Well, sounds like you got a problem convincing women to go to your games. Don't give me this equality stuff. And again, you know, I'm a keyboard warrior. Okay, I'm not necessarily equipped to work out on an oil rig, but like to me, it's like. It is the men proportionately who are defending our shores through the military, who are doing the hard work of, you know, building these buildings and construction, building the roads, getting
cleaning our
oil out of the
sewers,
ground that fuels the energy that we have. So like, you know, the whole girl boss, like we don't need anyone. Like, I don't really care for that at all.
You will never hear me saying that. I need my guys.
All right. Slide to the Twilight Zone now, Josh. What do you have?
Well, I got to do two because, of course, one of these stories you thought wasn't interesting, but
yeah, and I'll tell you why too. And I know what you're going to talk about.
I don't think I care. So, the first thing I'd like to say is there was a special election going on yesterday in Pennsylvania, state legislative seat. You're like, who really cares? Whatever. This was a district that Donald Trump won by 15 percentage points. So it should be a layup. It should be easy win for Republicans, you know, to have this legislative seat. But what happens? Ding, 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 ding. The Democrat won this race. This is really peculiar. Like, there's no reason a Democrat should win this race. Was there some massive scandal? Nope.
By like 100 votes, it looks like.
It was pretty darn close.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not even, you know, there's only about 55,000 votes total cast. So the margin, again, it used to be Republicans would win these special elections like super easily. We were dominant in these things for years and years and years. Now, Democrats are crying, this is the second one this year. This is awesome. They're spiking the football like everything's great. I bring this up as a warning because we have a Supreme Court race going on in Wisconsin. I need all Catholics in Wisconsin to get everyone at church to go to the polls and vote. You can vote early. Vote early, and if not, get to the ballot on April 1st because the Supreme Court is up for grabs. If Brad Schimmel wins, then the court is in conservative hands, and then maybe we won't have the pro-life law in Wisconsin overturned because that's what's at stake right now. And I am worried. We're doing our best. Catholic Vote, we sent out postcards. We have people working full-time on the ground in Wisconsin. We have ads running. We're doing our part. But there's a lot of people like, oh, I'm sorry, what was that election? Huh? What? Wake up. We need to get involved in these special elections because they do matter. Like, you know, this was the legislature in Pennsylvania is super close. Like, we could make a difference. And if we don't show up, but here's why. It used to be in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, the Republican Party was dominant amongst college-educated people and seniors. And those are both groups that vote disproportionately. It could be a snowstorm and they still vote. It's a blizzard, rain, monsoon, they're voting. Guess what? Democrats are doing well with what groups right now? College-educated whites and seniors. Therefore, special elections like this happen and they win. So this is why I'm trying to warn people, get out and vote. Donald Trump's coalition, he won the presidency twice because of this. Some people say 3 times. I don't. But he wins because he's getting the disaffected people who think that the whole system's corrupt. And I like Trump. I support him. But the rest of them I don't trust. I understand that sentiment. But we need to get those people to say, dude, Trump endorsed this guy. You need to get out and vote. So we really got to work hard. It's a very close race in Wisconsin. But at the end of the day, if you don't vote, we're going to lose.
Yeah, it's a new problem for Republicans, or I feel like a rare problem. Everything feels like it's been up recently. This is real.
Yeah. And you get a sense of how important the left sees this because former President Barack Obama dropped a whole little Twitter thread about Wisconsin and getting out so if he's paying attention to it, that they think it's important. And
Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker is a billionaire. He's sending in the neighboring state of Illinois. He wants Wisconsin to be just as blue as Illinois. And he sent tons, crates of cash to change things.
Pay attention, guys.
Yeah,
that's my first thing. Second thing, hey, there was a subcommittee on the Constitution, Senate Judiciary Committee. They're talking about the censorship industrial complex.
Come on, man.
Sorry.
This is, if you'll remember,
you're above this.
Tom was talking about government and state secrets and all this kind of stuff.
Yep.
This is where our own government was telling social media companies to censor the free speech of Americans. Like if there's anything that would make Thomas Jefferson's head explode, it was this scandal.
Here we go.
Yes, because the censorship industrial complex, it involves government funding at the federal and state level, working with NGOs, whether they're for-profit or not.
This would be helpful to me. The industrial censorship complex is an abstract term. It doesn't mean a lot to me. It conveys a lot of meaning, obviously, to many people here. But it has to get down to something very concrete as to what the government did. If it's an NGO, your view, I think the chairman's view too, is that NGO is hand in glove with the government.
So the government will work in partnership with NGOs on something like the Election Integrity Partnership, where they flag items for removal from social media companies. And so they're funding these NGOs. Sometimes they're actually flagging for the NGOs. The for-profit big tech companies will then remove the content.
Let me interrupt because I'm being monitored here by the timekeeper, Senator Kennedy. But this is just an observation. I'm part of the Democratic Party. You give us way too much credit for being that organized to be able to put this whole massive enterprise together. I don't know how it works in Chicago. But in
part because you can rely on the censorship industrial complex to do the work for you.
All right.
Oh,
Mollie!
Gosh,
I love it. That was.
Oh, she is just amazing.
Yeah.
She and her husband are good friends of mine for 25 plus years. They're just they are.
This is okay. This is all making sense now. This is making sense why you wanted to move this to top story today. You got your influence. You're bought for and paid for.
I'm bought for by Mollie Hemingway.
Your friendship with
I probably haven't
Hemingway.
seen her in 3 years. I'm sure she even remembers my name. Yeah, give me a break. No.
Show me the back channel communication. Were you talking over Signal?
I refuse to admit. No, but this is one of the biggest scandals. Like, again, this is like when it comes to the media talks about how, free speech is so important. And like they argued for years, like the Pentagon Papers, we have the constitutional right. We'll go to the Supreme Court and make sure we have the right. How dare the government tell us what we can and cannot publish? And then you have the FBI telling Facebook, hey, take down these posts of Americans talking to each other. And it's like the media's like, oh, what? Oh, is this a story? I don't know. Who cares? Let's talk about texting between.
Hey. I'm not saying that this
is
an important story.
The biggest story. This is actually, I think, the most wretched thing our government has done, potentially. I mean, like, really? I mean, it's
no doubt.
Every we disagree about the sexual revolution, and obviously abortion is horrible because so many babies are killed. I think that's the number one issue in America. I still do. But this is the issue where, why is it not every single American in the country should be outraged to the point of vomiting that our government would use its intelligence agencies to convince tech companies to censor, take down. You couldn't communicate what you wanted. I could not get on, and again, in addition to the censorship, then there's also the stuff where private tech companies wouldn't abide by free speech. You couldn't say Bruce Jenner's a dude. That's another thing that's annoying. But this is so egregious. Like, is there a First Amendment or not? I forget. Like this is pour tea into the harbor kind of stuff. Yeah, and you're what is this?
Josh, you're not even giving me the chance. Right. I'm not saying this is bad. I'm not saying it's outrageous. I'm just saying this has been well covered, well documented by ourselves and everyone else, 3 months ago. I still think we're uncovering it now. Obviously, it wasn't like super breaking. But I will say, if I could add to this, Josh.
Is it not important that it brought to the Senate, though? Come on.
I mean, it has in other ways as well. But anyway, what I would like to add to this is I was reading, I saw this New York Times headline. With orders, investigations, and innuendo, Trump and GOP aim to cripple the left. The president and his allies in Congress are targeting the financial, digital, and legal machinery that powers the Democratic Party and much of the progressive political world. If you get into it, it's talking about ominous suggestions that nonprofits aligned with Democrats or critical of President Trump should have their tax exemptions revoked. Talking about these exact NGOs. They will aggressively attack the players and machinery that power the left, taking a series of highly partisan official actions that, if successful, will threaten to hobble Democrats' ability to compete in elections for years to come. We're talking about tax money.
You're right. Exactly. And they are literally describing the entire strategy of the left for the last 20 years. Like
20, like 50, but
50 years.
I mean, it remains a total miracle that Republicans ever won anything. Like, tax money was being spent to censor actual Americans through NGOs, and then also given to NGOs and like the entire world to cause problems with USAID. But we're just at the tip of the iceberg of how much artificial stuff was just astroturfed through our very own tax money. How did Republicans ever win? I don't know.
Right. And in the tax bill, it'll be interesting to see as we go through reconciliation and they talk about the tax bill, whether or not they start to tax again endowments. And again, Hillsdale will be the one to say, just provide an exemption for those that do not, go to the government teat.
Right, exactly.
That's a good exemption as far as I'm concerned.
Not a vocabulary word I expected to hear on today's Loopcast, but once again, Josh.
We had a lot today. This has been a fun show.
I know, this is crazy.
Erica, I slide to you now.
All right, I'm going to go. The tables do turn, the pendulum swings, and Joe Rogan is posting about the Shroud of Turin. And since it's Lent, I just wanted to highlight this. I love the Shroud of Turin. I geek out over the Shroud of Turin. And I think, Pogo, you and I were talking about this yesterday. Like, it's one of those mysteries in the church and those really cool artifacts from history that I'll watch a video of it, and then like a year later, I'll watch something similar and have completely forgotten all the cool stuff about it. It's like Our Lady of Guadalupe, the image on the Tillman.
But I feel like that sticks for me. There's something very specific about Shroud of Turin where I'm just like, I know it's an image of Jesus. I just forget why people care about it. And so it's always nice to get the reminder of like, oh yeah, this actually is pretty sick.
Yeah. So Joe Rogan posted this video to his 15.2 million followers on Twitter, which is really cool. It's from Dr. Joseph Campbell, who is of ivermectin fame. During COVID, he would post series of videos on COVID, posting what was deemed then misinformation and conspiracy theories, all of which have been proven. Oh, it actually happened that way. So Joseph Campbell, he's suffered a lot, but he's posted this video on the image of the crucified man, the photo negative image, just a couple of tidbits that I'd forgotten that I love to bring up again. So the Shroud of Turin, it's a linen cloth, which is not photosensitive material. And yet what we have on it is a photo negative imprinted on the top layers only of these fibers. There is no human brush that can interact with human fiber at this kind of precision. A human brush would go through. So the most prevalent theory, he says, suggests the image was formed by a sudden burst of photons or high-intensity light radiating from the body of the man, was wrapped in this linen cloth, creating a negative imprint on the cloth. The burst of radiation would have had to be incredibly brief, less than 1/40 billionth of a second, and incredibly intense in the order of several billion watts. Father Spitzer says 6 to 8 billion watts in a 40 billionth of a second to procure the image that we have now. No one can explain this scientifically.
And if it was longer, it would actually, like, wouldn't it burn it? Like,
it would have burned through the cloth.
Just the right amount of time, the right amount of intensity, and then super quick and not long.
Yeah, so that even today with our technology, we cannot reproduce what is on this cloth. And as the years go by and scientists examine it and more comes out about it, it just seems there is no explanation.
What I will say is
really
interesting
cool
about this too is this guy, this doctor, it was saying that it's a really cool intersection of faith and science playing together well, because I think they said NASA scientists were able to use a technique that they use for things in space to basically make it into a 3D image. So it's not just the negative. They were able to take the negative and actually add depth to it. And so you can see with the depth a very Jesus-looking individual. You know? Like, it's kind of cool.
You can actually see how he would have been. Yeah, the thing that I love about this relic in particular is that it was almost like, so I am a believer in the Shroud of Turin, just to put that out there. It's like God gave us this treasure that couldn't even fully be unpacked until human technology caught up to it in a way, right? Because the fact that it's a photo negative, the first time we saw the image of Christ in the shroud as a positive image was 1898. I mean, we're talking thousands of years after the event occurred. This photographer finally had the technology to see the actual positive image. And then now with our space technology, we can generate a 3D image from it of Christ's body actually lying. It's almost like God just gave us this treasure to unpack. So, hey, technology's not all bad if it means we can unpack this beautiful relic that we have. So once again, my mind was blown. Happy Lent, happy Passion of Christ coming up, Shroud of Turin. I'm a fan.
Well, Erica, I wish that you would have gone last, because this is not nearly as delightful. This is Jasmine Crockett. And I have,
you're ruining my vibe.
Jasmine Crockett, representative from Texas. I've kind of, I don't know if taking the high road is the right word. She's had a lot of antics. And
she's totally fake too, by the way.
Yeah, so we'll get into that. But basically, this is just the perfect intersection of all the things I really despise. Right?
Just to
this is a member of Congress. She's speaking at a human rights campaign event with the big equal signs in the background, which the Human Rights Campaign to me might be the most evil NGO out right now. Here is her talking about Governor Abbott, who has been paralyzed since the 80s.
Because we in these hot ass Texas streets, honey. Y'all know we got Governor Hot Wheels down there. Come on now. And the only thing hot about him is that he is a hot ass mess, honey. So yes.
So let's play a game. What is worse? Making fun of a paralyzed, disabled individual, calling him Governor Hot Wheels at an event devoted to equality for all people?
Human rights.
Is it that people at this event devoted to equality laughed at this mocking of said individual? Or is it the fake accent that she uses to sound more ghetto? So I say fake because we have video footage of her when she first joined Congress. She's well educated. She went to law school.
Private school, St. Louis.
School, private Catholic school in St. Louis. And no, she did not sound like that. So she's played it up. Or the double down non-apology that we got could be the worst element of it. My personal favorite. We get a tweet from her. I wasn't thinking about the governor's condition. I was thinking about the planes, trains, and automobiles he used to transfer migrants into communities led by black mayors.
Planes, trains, and automobiles.
Listen to this. Led by black mayors deliberately stoking tension and fear among the vulnerable. Literally, the next line I said was, he was a hot ass mess, referring to his terrible policies. At no point did I mention or allude to his condition. So I'm even more appalled that the very people who unequivocally support Trump, a man known for racially insensitive nicknames and mocking those with disabilities, are now outraged. Now, I just would like to sit back and just bask in the glow of this. This is perfect. Perfect. Yes. She does not apologize at all, turns it into a race issue by talking about black mayors, which is awesome. And then turns it even around further, said the people that are outraged about her making fun of a obviously disabled individual are the real ones that should be ashamed and should be have an issue with this. I will also bring up, I looked into her history a little bit. There was a very influential lawyer that started her path down wanting to solve social issues. A very famous, probably the most famous race hustling lawyer. He represented a very famous football player. Do you have any guesses who that is?
O.J. Simpson?
Mm-hmm. Do you know who represented him?
I forget. Dershowitz?
Johnny Cochran.
Cochran.
So, I mean, you have to almost hat tip. This is straight out of the Johnny Cochran playlist of let's deflect, turn it into a race issue, and then we'll move forward. However, people even dug into, she apparently liked a post on Facebook before the migrant thing started happening that referred to Abbott as Governor Hot Wheels.
Because of his wheelchair.
Right?
Because of her wheelchair. So none of this stands.
So she even plagiarized
every element of this.
It's all fake.
Is terrible. But I mean, this is where we're at. These are the people representing us.
And again, I mean, I think Abbott should play it like whatever. Like this person is an idiot and not get super offended or sensitive about it or whatever. But it just highlights how the left, the communists, like freak out whenever you say, "Oh, that's totally insensitive," dude. I mean, come on. Like, are you telling me? Like, if J.D. Vance had said something about, a congressman that was in a wheelchair that was a Democrat, like it would be wall-to-wall coverage for weeks and weeks and months. In fact, that's what Trump ended up. When Trump would say something like this, which I thought was stupid and ill-advised, they covered it for months and months and months and months.
No, they still bring it up.
But he also didn't do it at the Human Rights Campaign. That's the element of all of this that I think we're missing here, that the people devoted to equality and what do they call them? Like maligned communities, all the BIPOC, like all the intersections, the people that are so devoted to that mission, they're showing up to this event to donate, are laughing at a joke about a disabled person.
Yeah. Does anyone really believe the Human Rights Campaign at this point? Except maybe some poor sucker like sophomores in college can still think that that's the mission. It's a Marxist organization. Their point is to tear down.
I mean, they're
okay. So here,
their
Tony
logo's
in the
an
chat,
equal sign.
Do you see Tony in the chat?
Yeah.
She's living rent free in Republican heads right now. They're giving her. We're helping her get tons of campaign donations. Here's my question for you, Tony.
Tony,
is it better to have attractive communists like Jasmine Crockett or ugly ones like Rosa DeLauro? I mean, that's the question I'd like to know. I mean, because Jasmine Crockett seems like she's on the hot, crazy matrix,
Tony also said, don't you think the governor should just roll with it like JD did?
Roll with it.
Is that a pun?
Well played, Tony.
I largely think he should just kind of like, whatever. She's just an idiot,
Yeah.
I think not be offended.
Which actually, like, he went on Fox and he pretty much said that. He's just like, this is stupid. And
this
here's
is
what we're
stupid.
actually doing in Texas. Let's talk about what I'm actually doing as governor.
Yeah. True. All right. So a little bit different ending to the show today. I actually had the opportunity to speak to Mary Margaret Olohan, friend of the program, White House correspondent for Daily Wire. And I got to talk to her right outside of the White House, which was kind of a cool experience.
Cool.
I got 10 minutes with her. If you're wondering what the new media initiative is like, if you wonder what she's been up to, if you wonder what the Trump administration's communication style has been like, I'm actually just going to play it right here. It's 11 minutes. Before I do so, quick ask, join the Champions Club, help us out. It's the best way to support us. Check out our sponsors of today's episode. Thank you to them. You can leave reviews, Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and subscribe here on YouTube. It's where we have the most fun. So without further ado, pray for us, but I'm going to play this video and we will see you guys ready to rock on Friday. Joined by our favorite guest, Mary Margaret Olohan, White House correspondent, actually on the scene right now. Thank you so much for taking the time for a few questions.
Of course. I love LOOPcast. Happy to join you guys. You guys are one of my favorite podcasts and newsletters there is.
Awesome. So I'm going to get into my questions here real quick. Okay. First one, what is your experience so far with the communication style of the Trump administration?
Yeah, it's super interesting. They talk a lot about how they want to be the most transparent administration the country has ever seen. They're really pushing transparency after the last 4 years we saw with the Biden administration, where we very rarely were able to see, non-legacy outlets getting questions and briefings or access to the president. And I would actually say this has been a very transparent administration. There's been a lot of opportunities for people like me, new media like the Daily Wire, to get into the White House, to ask questions to President Trump, to Caroline Leavitt, to be in the pool press, which means we get to go around and follow the president throughout the day to his schedule. I was actually able to go on Air Force One a couple weekends ago and travel with the president down to Palm Beach. So it's been really cool, and it's awesome to have a White House that's interested in furthering the press's access rather than restricting it. And, of course, there's people who disagree with how the administration is running, or they might disagree with the policy that are coming from the administration. But I think at the end of the day, most of us would agree that we are getting much more access than reporters did last time around. And that's a good thing for everyone, especially people in the United States of America who deserve to know what's going on.
Absolutely. So speaking of traveling with the president, what is something that you have noticed that maybe the public doesn't get to see?
Well, he's a very busy man. I think a lot of people might think when he goes down to Florida, he's just, recreating in what some people call the winter White House. But I was interested to find out that he's actually taking meetings. He's taking phone calls. He's doing a lot of different presidential things that you would not expect him to be doing on a golf course. But for example, 2 weekends ago when he was down there, I was told that he was preparing to give his joint address. So that was part of the reason that there weren't a lot of public events. Air Force One itself is very cool. It's obviously a private plane that the president flies on with his team. The press sits in the back, but that's cool in and of itself because, we still get our meals on the plane, very good food. You get on there and you see on your seat, there's a little sign that says, Miss Olohan, welcome aboard Air Force One, which is, that's fun. And then when you arrive at the destination, the pool press, including me, will typically kind of circle up and get ready to answer or ask the president questions if he'll take them. When I was there, he didn't, unfortunately. We were very sad. He came down the stairs and waved to us and then went on his way. But he will sometimes come back to the back of the plane and take questions from the press. My friend Elizabeth Mitchell was back there and was able to ask him some questions last weekend. So it's just a very cool experience. And I would love to do it again if I can.
Yeah. What has surprised you most about being White House correspondent?
Oh, really? I think I didn't realize how much hurry up and waiting there would be. It's a very cool job. It's a huge responsibility. And obviously, I'm the Daily Wire's first White House correspondent, so we're figuring a lot of this out for ourselves. But a lot of the time, you're hurrying to get here. You don't want to be late, and then you got to wait to go in, to a press conference. So there's a lot of hurrying and then, feverishly trying to make sure you're understanding the news, understanding the events of the day, have questions prepared in case you're in a situation where, suddenly someone pops out of the White House and they're doing a little mini presser out in front with all the reporters. So it's very different every day. And I kind of love that. It's been, reporting in general is different every single day, but especially this Trump White House, there's just, you never know what's going to be happening. We usually get the schedule the night before. So right when I'm going to sleep, I'll get an email and I'll know, maybe there's a briefing the next day or maybe there's a press conference. So it's exciting. It's fun. And I'm excited to be here and to be able to do this for Daily Wire.
Yeah. And first off, congratulations. We're all rooting for you. I have two questions specifically on the new media front. So new media front, how in practice has the White House changed what they have done previously in terms of allowing new voices in? And then number two, I've seen you ask a few questions and you got a little experience now under your belt. What makes an effective question in that press environment to actually get the most information possible out?
No, it's a really good question. And I guess I'll talk about the new media part first. Caroline announced very quickly after the administration began in January that they were going to be allowing new media in. So what that means is, reporters at outlets that weren't necessarily legacy outlets or even some influencers and podcasters that wouldn't be considered traditional media. Right now, what I've seen is most of the people in the room work for a news outlet. And if they don't, they work for a very newsy podcast. So that's kind of the nature of the new media that I'm seeing. Most people are really professional. They are coming in there with legitimate questions that they want answered. And I think that's a huge plus. Obviously, I think most people should agree that we should be having as many different perspectives in there as possible, as many different outlets with different perspectives who have reporters in there that are asking questions that the people of America care about. As for asking effective questions, I'm hoping that my questions are effective. And you're right, it is hard to sometimes get a substantive answer. For example, if Caroline's already addressed something, she's not really going to repeat it again. She actually might even be annoyed if people are asking questions that she's repeatedly says she doesn't have information on. You'll see that a lot with Russia, Ukraine, where reporters will kind of ask the same questions with a very obvious slant or bias. They're trying to get a very specific answer. And she knows what they're doing. So she'll typically say, I've already addressed this several times. I'll refer you to this statement or that statement. So I think in general, if you want to get a substantive answer, you have to ask a question that hasn't been asked before. You got to be looking for an answer that she might actually have something on. So that's a little bit of a challenge, but we're trying every day. I think this week I got a bunch of questions in. One of the most important, I think, was on the United States Institute of Peace, where Doge went in and told the old leadership, you are no longer in charge. We need to replace you with a new head of this organization. And that decision came also from the board of directors at the United States Institute of Peace. And they did not like this. The old leadership barricaded himself in his office and would not allow the new leadership in. So this was a question that I had seen a lot of mainstream media frame as, Doge illegally enters this building. Well, that was not, in fact, what happened. And so I was able to ask about that in the briefing, and we got a great, long, substantive answer on it. And I was really happy about that. So that's my goal, is to ask questions that we can get real answers on that no one else is asking. And especially if the framing has been inaccurate by other outlets, I think it's really important that we should be asking those questions.
Exactly. And your life really revolves around this right now, obviously, as it should. There's so much going on. What is something that you've observed that you think not enough people are paying attention to? Just because you're there all the time, you see everything. I know there's basically the things people are trying to put in front of people and then what's going on behind the scenes. So what's some of that behind the scenes you think people should know about more?
Well, I think in general, it's kind of hard to sometimes see exactly what's going on. And you have to take a step back sometimes, because absolutely there are narratives or small things that people will focus on, whether it's a very specific narrative by legacy media that they're focused on, or whether even, in fact, it's something that the Trump administration is really focused on. It's good to be able to take a step back and kind of zoom out and understand, okay, these are the massive world events going on right now. This is what we should be paying attention to. This is what we should be asking about, not just the one single thing that everyone is focused on that day. So that's something I'm trying to do, to try and kind of have a global view of the issues going on right now, because it can get really easy. It can be very easy to get bogged down in the very specific things. Like, for example, the judge who tried to halt Trump's deportation flights to El Salvador. There was a huge focus on that judge this week. I knew that most people would be asking about that during the briefing, so I thought I'll ask about something else. I would like to get new information on something. So that's a technique that I've been trying to employ, and we'll see how that works out for me.
Yeah. And just for you personally, I mean, what an awesome opportunity. What would you consider, say, a successful 4 years? What's your metric of success when it comes to your job?
For me, I'm hoping we'll get more and more access to the Trump administration. I'd love to do interviews with cabinet officials. That's definitely something on our radar. We'd also like to be interviewing Trump himself, Vance himself, Caroline Leavitt herself, all of these people. We think they have really interesting stories to share, and we'd like to show them to our audience. Daily Wire readers are very conservative. They're very interested in everything that's going on here at the White House. So we want to give them the things that they're interested in, and we're going to try and be doing that. That's but also, we're going to be at world events like we've already been. Yesterday I was at the signing of the executive order on the education department. I was at the signing of the executive order on men and women's sports. So already been at some very historic events and able to ask some important questions. And we just hope that we'll continue building on that and doing more and more of it.
Last question. I know I'm running late on time. For the Catholics out here, right? Catholic Vote, LOOPcast. We're all supporting you, Catholic. There's a lot of Catholics in the administration, Caroline Leavitt, J.D. Vance. Have you seen kind of small showings of that, of their public faith in their work or your time at the White House?
Absolutely. J.D. Vance brought a Dominican friar into the briefing room the other day. I'm sure you saw that, Tom.
Yeah. Awesome.
He just brought him in to show him what the briefing room looked like. But also, if you listen to some of J.D. Vance's speeches, his rhetoric, he's mentioned Pope John Paul II a number of times in passing. I believe he gave a speech at a tech summit last Friday or earlier this week, in which he specifically mentioned the deceased Pope and referenced an encyclical he had written on tech and the importance of actually utilizing these types of AI technology or furthering technology for the better of humanity and not ignoring it. So I think that's really interesting. And also, I know on Ash Wednesday there was a Ash Wednesday service at the White House that a lot of different members of the administration took part of. So there's absolutely little glimmers and snatches of Catholicism throughout the administration. And I know a lot of the members are Catholic themselves. So, well, I guess we'll have to wait and see what else we see on that front.
Guess so. So other than putting in a good word for me on New Media Voices, I'd love to sit next to you if possible. Thank you so much for the time. If people want to follow your work and support you, where can they do so?
Yes, so they can read my stories at dailywire.com, or they can find me on X at Mary Marg Olohan.
The best. Thank you so much for taking the time, and good